Palestine and Israel bombed Gaza with 12,000 tons of explosive in just 24 hours, the equivalent of an atomic bomb, killing at least 704 people. UNICEF reports that the Israeli occupation forces murdered 2,360 Palestinian children and injured over 5,000 since the start of its latest aggression against Gaza on October 7th. The leaders of Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hamas movement met for the first time since the beginning of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Israel bombed the Strip with 12,000 tons of explosive in just 24 hours, the equivalent of an atomic bomb, and closed what is so far the bloodiest day since October 7th. At least 704 people were killed by the 33 tons of explosives that hit every square kilometer of the enclave. The total death toll of the occupier amounts to almost 6,000, mostly women and children. The health ministry claims that many families were crushed under rubble of residential buildings, and more than a third of the hospitals have been affected by these attacks. The president of Brazil, country sharing the United Nations Security Council, demanded an end to the killing of children. In Palestine, citizens protested and burned pictures of French President Emmanuel Macron during his visit to the country. Palestinian civilians took to the streets to reject the visit of President Macron to the city of Ramallah, where he met with the President of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas. The President had previously met with families of hostages held captive in the Gaza Strip, in addition to meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In this regard, Macron expressed to Netanyahu that Israel's security and stability in the Middle East will not last unless it recognizes the legitimate right of the Palestinians to have their own state.
I think it's like he shouldn't come to Ramallah. He should shame of himself after he say what he say in Tel Aviv, and with what message that has bring from France to Tel Aviv in supporting this criminal government, criminal state, that they are launching genocide war in Gaza. So he's part of the crime.
In the latest 18 days, Israel has murdered 2,360 Palestinian children and injured over 5,000, condemning them to be treated in hospital with no provisions of anesthesia, electricity, and water. On Wednesday, UNICEF reported such figures. The organization agrees on the urgency expressed by President Lula Silva, adding that children of Gaza are running out of time. Adel Kold, director of the UNICEF for the Middle East, argued that the occupants' bombings kill and injure every day over 400 Gazan children, describing the children's death toll as a very alarming figure. In addition, this fund foresees that death will ramp up in view of the Israeli rejection of allowing the entrance of humanitarian aid. The Palestinian Minister of Foreign Affairs rejected Israel's stand against the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. They point out that the Israeli stand has no justification and denotes a serious lack of respect and commitment to the international organization. They point out this is a new Israeli attempt to neutralize the role of the Secretary General and his legal capacity. The head of the Bureau, Riyad al-Maliki, stressed that the role of the UN and its representatives is to stop the open and destructive war of occupation and to bring humanitarian aid to bring some relief to the situation of the millions of Palestinians, mostly women and children. In Malaysia, citizens demonstrated in a suburb of Kuala Lumpur with prayers and curses in support and solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Demonstrators waved Palestinian flags and wore all white, chanting slogans such as "Long live Palestine" and "God is great" during the demonstration. The Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim urged the Arab countries to unite for the protection of Palestinian land, while indicating that there is no solution to the conflict because Tel Aviv has become too arrogant with the backing of the United States and Europe. Likewise, the Malaysian Premier pointed out the attack of the Israeli army against the Gaza Strip as the height of barbarism.
It is the level of insanity to allow people to be butchered, babies to be killed, hospitals to be bombed, and schools to be destroyed. This is the height of barbarism in this world.
The leaders of Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Hamas movement held their first meeting since the beginning of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on Wednesday. Syed Hassan Nasrallah, Ziad Dakhele and the deputy head of Hamas, Saleh al-Haruri, held a meeting which has been described by regional media as monumental to assess the latest developments in the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the operation. It was reported that the leaders discussed the developments on all fronts, including the clashes along the Lebanon-Palestinian border. Regional and global positions were also at the center of the talks. After 18 days, the Israeli siege against the Gaza Strip continues. So far, some 5,791 Palestinians have been reported killed in the Gaza Strip, as well as more than 16,000 wounded, according to official figures. According to the authorities, some 2,360 of the dead were children, 1,292 women, and some 295 elderly people.
Attacks against the Gaza Strip have intensified, while Palestinian health authorities warn that in the last 24 hours, more than 700 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli occupation shelling. During the early hours of Tuesday morning, several attacks were reported against schools and makeshift shelters by Israeli forces.
We call on the whole world to interfere and stop the war and the damage. Most of those who are dying are children. We are in a safe shelter school. There are no armed men among us.
On Tuesday, a bombing was also reported against the vicinity of the Nasser hospital in the south of the Gaza Strip. According to the health authorities, patients and refugees who were in the hospital had to be transferred to other areas, while efforts are on the way to rescue the victims of this attack. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, at least 12 hospitals and 32 health centers are out of service, and in the next 24 hours the remaining ones could be closed due to the lack of essential fuel for the power plants that run the hospitals in Gaza. For its part, the Palestinian movement, Hamas, confirmed the release of two women of 79 and 85 years old for medical and humanitarian reasons. The detainees assured that despite being held, their captors made sure that they had the necessary care.
They were very nice and made sure we had enough to eat and drink. They treated us well and paid attention to every detail.
The hostage releases come amid calls by humanitarian organizations to allow the entry of humanitarian aid and fuel that could alleviate the health situation in Gaza.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Mexico celebrates its 20th anniversary as a milestone in its work to eradicate the causes of poverty and promote a transformation that puts people and the planet at the center of its efforts. The Network in Defense of Humanity was created by political actors such as former President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, the Nobel Prize winners Rigoberta Menchú, Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, and Wol Soyinka, and the 5 Cuban heroes and more than 15,000 prestigious artists, intellectuals, and scientists. In the same way, the network has traveled a path of action and efforts interrelated with other social movements and diverse sectors of society, thus integrating an emancipating economy in solidarity with the people. In the United States, the Pentagon confirmed Tuesday that these illegal military bases in Iraq and Syria have been attacked by Iraqi groups since October 7th. According to Pat Ryder, Defense Department Press Secretary, there have been 13 attacks to date, 10 in Iraq and 3 in Syria, using drones and rockets. Details about the specific type and methods of defense were not shared for security reasons. What could be known is that at least 24 military personnel were wounded. Washington points out that the aggressor groups are close to Iran and stresses that they do not want a major conflict in the area. The Iraqi resistance declared its solidarity with the Palestinian cause since the beginning of the Al-Aqsa flood operation. The effects of the strike by the United States Auto Workers Union against Ford Motors, General Motors, and Stellantis are worsening. This Tuesday, more than 5,000 workers organized a strike at the Texas plant where General Motors' most expensive vehicles are manufactured. On Monday, they did the same in Michigan, At this moment, the result is that the three most important automobile companies have their largest and most profitable plants on strike. Far from accepting a negotiating table with the leaders, they have fired more workers whose strike is costing them almost $488 million in wages, which compared to the $9.3 billion that the company are losing is little more than a pittance. In Panama, security forces repressed demonstrations rejecting the contract between the state and the Canadian company to continue copper extraction in forested areas. This after citizens mobilized for the second consecutive day against the government's decision, alleging that the bill is detrimental to the country's interests due to the concessions granted to the mining company, which are considered illegal and unconstitutional. Unions called assemblies throughout the country to reject the approval of the contract, which is valid for 20 years and has the option to extend it, while several industries in the country were paralyzed to attend the protest. Meanwhile, during the current day, national police officers launched gases against citizens mobilized in the capital, Panama City. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. More than 540 South African miners are still held underground in Johannesburg, eastern South Africa. A dispute between unions has kept workers at a new Kleinfontein gold mine since Monday morning. According to the mine CEO, John Harricourt, the miners tried to leave at the end of the day but were held back by members of the construction and mining union. The directors of the National Union representatives of the retained miners described the rival union as vandals. Inside the mine, where there are also women, negotiations are being held to resolve the crisis that already had a first chapter in 2012 and ended with the death of 34 workers. Women in Iceland go on strike to demand an end to the wage gap and gender-based violence. One of the slogans, "This is what they call equality," thousands of women participated in a dozen mobilizations nationwide that were supported by the Icelandic Prime Minister. The authority also detailed that they have not yet reached the gender equality objectives and that is why they continue to fight against the salary gap and gender violence. The demonstrations coincided with the anniversary of the so-called Women's Day Off, where on October 24, 1975, 90% of the female population united to demand their labor rights.
Yes, I've decided to start working today, even if I'm still on alerts because of my job. I'm here to support the movements, and it's great to see all the support here. In Reykjavik city center, to see everyone gathered today to reiterate his basic demand, which is the right for equality.
Otis became a Hurricane Category 5 on Tuesday in Mexican Pacific waters and rapidly strengthened with winds of over 270 kilometers per hour as it made landfall in the southwest coast of Mexico, according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. Otis is a Category 5 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. Further strengthening is forecast, and Otis is expected to be an extremely dangerous hurricane when the center made landfall early Wednesday morning, the NHC said in its report. It added that at noon the cyclone entered the south of Acapulco. In Guerrero, the state where Acapulco is located, the local government suspended classes and also suspended work for local government workers, while citizens were urged to follow official recommendations. In the United Kingdom, a group of archaeologists unearthed a huge tomb of some 5,000 years old during an excavation in the Orkney Islands, an archipelago located in northern Scotland, discovering 14 articulated skeletons of women, men, and children, including two that were positioned as if they were hugging each other. The Guardian reports that the excavation was led by Hugo Anderson Weimark, head of the Neolithic Prehistory Conservation and National Museum Scotland, and Professor Vicky Cummins, Professor of Neolithic Archaeology at Cardiff University. In addition, local volunteers were involved who also helped find pottery, stone tools, and a pin carved from bone. The experts described the structure, which dates around 3000 BC, as Neolithic feat of engineering. The tomb measures more than 15 meters in diameter and contains a stone construction accessed through a long passageway of about 7 meters. And we have come to the end of this newsbrief from you. Before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events, tell you life stories of the people of the South, and break the hegemonic media dominance. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and you can also join us on our social medias on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.